Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Inshallah, we're going to go back to the beginning of the book. We just started and we just finished maybe 3 or 4 hadiths. I thought maybe a better system would be to take one of the explanations of the book. I will try to prepare before we start, and that's what I did today. Just highlight some important points in the explanation of the hadith. This way it's more academic and more in depth. And then inshallah we'll just get started. It's a long of course explanation. It will be a long explanation. It will take us a long time to finish the book, but inshallah we'll get started and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy. This is one of the explanations of Sahih Muslim. It's called Fathul Mulhim بشرح Sahih Muslim. Means the enlightenment of the enlightener in the explanation of Sahih Muslim by a sheikh called Sheikh Shabir Ahmad Al-Uthmani. But there are many other explanations of Sahih Muslim. This sheikh lived maybe just less than 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago. The famous explanation of Sahih Muslim is like the explanation of Imam al-Nawawi. That's an older one. But also there's Imam al-Qurtubi. He made an explanation of Sahih Muslim as well. This explanation, as you see, it's a big book. It falls in 6 volumes. We will skip the isnad as much, unless there's something very important in the isnad, which is a chain of narration, and go directly to the subject of the hadith, the matan, and the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, unless there's an important part in the isnad, or the story preceding the hadith, or the scenario, or the occasion that led to this hadith being mentioned. That's one thing. So that's 6 big volumes, but the biggest and most comprehensive explanation I've come across for Sahih Muslim is by an Ethiopian Imam who is still living till today. He's called Sheikh al-Ethiopi. I don't recall his first name. Muhammad Adam al-Ethiopi. His explanation of Sahih Muslim falls in more than 30 volumes. 30 big volumes, yani. So he made a huge effort in explaining the book. You can download it. You can download it from the internet if you want to, but it's really, really big. Inshallah, we'll go. This is medium size of Sheikh al-Uthmani, 6 volumes. But I think it's very, very useful as well. And inshallah, whenever I get time, I will also go back to the bigger explanation of Sheikh al-Ethiopi. If there's more benefit, we'll try to extract it from it. So as you know, Imam Muslim started his book with the most important subject, which is the book of Imaan, belief in Allah Azza wa Jal, and what relates to this, and the books and the messengers and so on. And the first hadith is the hadith of Jibreel that we read before, which talks about Islam, Iman and Ihsan, correct? We read this hadith. Just to tell you a quick story about the beginning of this hadith, how it went and how it was narrated. That's a man called Yahya ibn Ya'mar. He says the first one to talk about al-Qadr, meaning the divine decree of Allah, in Basra was a man called Ma'bad al-Juhani. Before this time, people used to believe in Allah in a very simple way, very straightforward way, that Allah is the one who does everything, and we don't go into too much detail beyond that. We know that Allah is the one who creates everything and does everything, and nothing moves except by the power and will of Allah and by His creation. But then came some people, they were called later on Al-Qadariyya, the people who deviated. Qadariyya doesn't mean they believe in Qadr. It means that they deviated in the subject of Qadr from the straight path. They felt that when it comes to the actions of a human being is the one who creates his own actions, and that they are not known prior to happening by Allah Azza wa Jal, which is really something that is kufr. And I don't know how they came to this conclusion, yani, to basically describe Allah that He doesn't know what His slaves will do. So the reason they went into this subject was that they felt that if you say that Allah is the one who creates everything, then Allah, that's how they felt, is Allah forces the human being to commit sins whenever he commits sins. So this cannot be. So we can only conclude that the human being is the one who does whatever he does, totally separate from the power and will of Allah Azza wa Jal, and totally separate from the knowledge of Allah, that Allah has no prior knowledge about what this human being will do, which is, as I mentioned, this is totally against Islam, and it is a way to basically depart from Islam. Allah Azza wa Jal created the human being and created his ability and created his free will. So all these systems are created by Allah Azza wa Jal. But that free will functions in such a way that a human being really has a free will to do whatever he wants. But where did this free will come from? From Allah Azza wa Jal. It is the creation of Allah. So the one who created the human being is Allah. The one who created the world in which a human being functions is Allah. The one who created the system of free will in a human being is Allah, right? The one who gave the human being the power to do whatever he does is Allah Azza wa Jal. So by that we can say that Allah created the human being and everything this human being does. But that does not again go against the fact that human being still has a free will to do whatever he wills. Just right now, if you feel thirsty, you can decide right now to get up and drink water, or you can decide to wait a little bit. And you have that. That's by intuition. That's your free will. You don't need to be a philosopher to go into much deeper than this. It's quite clear and plainforward. So this Ma'bad al-Juhani came up with this innovation, but this innovation, it's not a good innovation, it's an evil innovation in Aqidah that can lead to kufr. So this Yahya ibn Ya'mar, he says, me and myself and Humayd ibn Abdul Rahman al-Himyari, we went for Hajj or for Umrah. And then they said, since we're going for Hajj or Umrah, let's meet with one of the companions, Ashab Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَسَأَلْنَاهُ عَمَّا يَقُولُ هَؤُلَاءِ فِي الْقَدَرِ, to ask him, what are these people saying about the Qadr? Is what they're saying correct or not correct? They created a confusion in the minds of the people in Basra. So they went. So Yahya ibn Amr says, فَوُفِّقَ لَنَا عَبْدُ اللَّهِ ibn Umar ibn Khattab. He says, وُفِّقَ لَنَا means by the Qadr of Allah. Abdullah ibn Umar Khattab, even the wording he used goes along with confirming that the Qadr is by Allah. He says, Allah gave the Qadr that Abdullah, the son of Umar ibn Khattab, is the one we meet. So we saw him entering the masjid. So he says, فَاكْتَنَفْتُهُ أَنَا وَصَاحِبِي أَحَدُنَا عَنْ يَمِينِهِ وَالْآخَرُ عَنْ شِمَالِهِ. He says, we immediately ran to him. One of us held him from his right arm, the other one from his left. And he says, I felt that my friend will allow me to speak. So I said, Ya Aba Abdul Rahman, and this is his kunya. He says, Ya Aba Abdul Rahman, إنه قد ظهر قبلنا ناس يقرؤون القرآن ويتقفرون العلم وذكر من شأنهم وأنهم يزعمون أن لا قدر. He says, there are certain people who are very well versed in the Quran, and they are very they're strong experts also in the knowledge of Islam as well. So they are scholars, basically the people who came up with these ideas. They had studied Islam in depth. He says, but they claim that there's no such thing as qadr, that there's no such thing as divine decree by Allah. So this is a big problem when the wrong concepts come from somebody who seems to be a scholar. That creates a huge confusion in the minds of people. And that's why there's actually a narration about a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, غَيْرُ الدَّجَّالِ أَخْوَفُنِي عَلَيْكُمْ الْأَئِمَّةُ الْمُضِلُّونَ. He says, I fear on you something that is even more evil than the false Christ, Dajjal. He says, the deviant scholars, or the scholars that cause people to deviate away from the straight path. And that is something we see in every generation, especially actually nowadays we see this a bit more. He says, they claim that there's no qadr, and that al-amru unuf. Amru unuf means that whenever people do something, that's when Allah knows it. He doesn't know it before they do it. What did Abdullah ibn Umar say? And we will stop at the beginning of the hadith. We won't go further than this. He says, إذا لقيت أولئك فأخبرهم أني بريء منهم وأنهم براء مني. He says, when you meet with them, tell them that I بريء منكم means I distance myself from them, and they are far away and distant from me, which means I have nothing to do with such people. I cannot support anything they're saying, and I'm totally against them. وَالَّذِي يَحْلِفُ بِهِ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ ibn Umar. He says, and what I can swear upon and make an oath upon, لو أن لأحدهم مثل أحد ذهبا فأنفقه ما قبل الله منه حتى يؤمن بالقدر. Amazing statement. He says, if one of them owns the weight of the mountain of Uhud, the mountain of Uhud is huge, in gold, and he spends it all for the sake of Allah, Allah will not accept from them unless they believe in the qadr. Subhanallah. So this shows you the importance of the sound belief. Sound belief is more important than just the actions. The actions are based on the sound belief. But if the belief is corrupt, even the actions will not be accepted by Allah Azza wa Jal. ثم قال حدثني أبي عمر بن الخطاب. Then he says, my father Umar ibn Khattab. And then he started narrating the hadith that while we were sitting, a man came up and met the Prophet ﷺ. He was wearing white clothes. His beard and his hair were shiny and dark and black and so on. We will read the hadith inshallah and go on to the explanation of this hadith. We'll make the classes inshallah short. Thank you. Stop here inshallah.